In the Amazing Digital Circus, Jax is one of the easiest characters to label at first glance. He presents himself as the jerk, abrasive, dismissive, and openly entertained by other people's discomfort. He provokes reactions and treats the fallout as proof that nothing here deserves to be taken seriously. That surface reading is tempting because it aligns with behavior we already recognize, but the show steadily undermines that simplicity. Welcome back to Luna Marin Reviews. Here, I break down animated shows with a focus on characters, psychology, narrative structure, and the choices that shape how these stories unfold. In this video, we're taking a closer look at Jax from the Amazing Digital Circus, examining how his view of the world, built on rigid roles and humor as a defense, slowly isolates him and sets him on a path toward collapse. Jax's cruelty isn't random, it's structured around a very specific way of seeing the world. He survives by flattening the circus into something familiar and controllable, a cartoon cast where everyone exists to fulfill a role. By reducing the people around him to stereotypes, he creates a mental framework in which unpredictability feels limited and emotional accountability feels optional. Within that framework, Ragatha becomes the nice one, endlessly forgiving and smoothing over conflict no matter the cost to herself. Gangle is the sad one, emotionally fragile and therefore easy to mock without consequence. Kinger is written off as the crazy one, which allows Jax to dismiss moments of clarity as meaningless noise. Subal becomes the angry one, a constant complainer whose frustration can be ignored rather than engaged with. Pomni is reduced to the new character, someone whose panic is treated as temporary and therefore unimportant. Even Kane is boxed into the ringmaster, a figure whose instability is excused as part of the performance rather than examined as a genuine threat. This system does two important things for Jax. First, it makes the situation feel manageable. If everyone behaves according to a role, then nothing truly unexpected can happen. Second, it creates distance. If people are just characters, then their pain doesn't require a response. Their reactions become part of the show rather than signals that something is wrong. The problem is that, in the show, these are complex individuals who learn to rely on each other to improve and deal with their own personal issues. Ragatha shows frustration, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. Her kindness has limits, and the show makes those limits visible. Gangle's emotional volatility is tied to pressure and fear, not weakness, and she is shown to experience genuine happiness even while wearing her sad mask. Kinger repeatedly demonstrates moments of awareness that cut through the chaos. Subal establishes clear boundaries and shows a grounded understanding of their own pain, eventually becoming a stabilizing presence for others rather than just a source of anger. Pomni never settles into the role Jax assigns her. Her continued refusal to normalize the circus forces the group to confront how wrong their situation actually is. None of these characters becomes idealized or emotionally resolved. What changes is that they stop behaving like props. They contradict the expectations placed on them. And that contradiction matters, because Jax's coping strategy only works if the roles remain intact. Jax applies the same logic to himself. He casts himself as the funny one, treating humor as both an identity and a justification. But what he consistently delivers isn't humor that builds connection. It's humiliation, provocation, and control. He pushes people until they react, then frames their reaction as the punchline. The group rarely laughs with him. Over time, they grow distant, dismissive, and cautious around him. Even when they don't explicitly exclude him, such as when they still involve him in escape planning later in the series, there is a clear emotional barrier. That distance is built up over what the show implies has been years of ongoing torment. The funny one label functions the same way his other categories do. If everything he does is a joke, then he never has to name his behavior as intentional harm. Comedy becomes a shield against responsibility. As long as he's performing, he doesn't have to examine why he needs to. The series is careful to show the cost of this avoidance. It highlights the strain on the group and the constant effort required to keep functioning in a space that erodes stability. Abstraction isn't portrayed as a momentary breakdown. It's the result of prolonged psychological pressure. When Jax is viewed through that lens, his behavior reads less as confidence and more as defense. He stays cruel to prevent closeness, and he positions himself above the situation so he doesn't have to admit that he's just as trapped as everyone else. By episode 6, that tension becomes difficult to ignore. Jax is not spiraling in obvious ways. He isn't visibly panicking or breaking down. But his entire coping strategy depends on the circus behaving like a cartoon. The moment the people around him prove they are more than the roles he assigned them, his system starts to fail. Episode 7 makes Jax's emotional withdrawal harder to ignore. While the rest of the cast participates in the beach adventure, Jax spends most of the episode separated from them, choosing isolation over engagement. This is no longer framed as him being disruptive or bored. It reads as deliberate absence. Where earlier episodes showed him asserting control by provoking others, this episode shows him opting out entirely. That distance becomes especially clear in the visual design. On the beach, everyone else is dressed in blue, new outfits provided by Kane for the adventure. Jax alone stays in red. He does not match the group, and he does not attempt to. Even when he is physically present, the color difference marks him as out of sync with the shared experience. It reinforces what has already been happening on an emotional level. Jax remains near the group, but he no longer engages with them in the same way. The gap between him and the others has widened to the point where his presence feels peripheral rather than disruptive. When the red and blue buttons appear, the symbolism becomes explicit. Blue represents moving forward with the group. Red represents staying behind. Jax does not hesitate. He chooses red. The beach scene sets this decision up in advance. Before the buttons exist, Jax has already positioned himself opposite everyone else. The color contrast establishes his role in the group dynamic. While the others, flawed as they are, continue attempting some form of collective survival, Jax opts out of that effort entirely. This choice is consistent with his worldview. Staying in the circus allows him to preserve the coping system he has built. The circus, as a controlled and artificial space, supports his belief that nothing needs to be taken seriously and no emotional repair is required. Living would mean confronting the consequences of his behavior, both toward others and toward himself. Jax chooses permanence because permanence removes the need for change. The red button lets him remain exactly where he is, both physically and emotionally. By the time he presses it, his isolation is complete. He is no longer separated from the group because he is antagonistic. He is separated because he has chosen not to move with them at all. The red versus blue imagery is not subtle symbolism layered on top of the narrative. It is the narrative. Jax places himself against the group long before the decision is verbalized. However, right before Jax presses the red button, the episode includes something rare for the series: brief flashes of imagery that don't belong to the circus. The visuals are fragmented and unclear, but they seem to resemble someone driving on a road. This moment suggests that something from the outside world surfaces at the exact point where living becomes possible. Earlier in the episode, when Zubul directly asks Jax about his life before the circus, his response is evasive. Unlike other characters who at least acknowledge fragments of their former lives or connections, Jax offers nothing concrete. The implication is not just that he has no one waiting for him, but that he doesn't want to engage with that reality at all. The flashback supports that reading. It doesn't look comforting. If the circus represents stagnation and emotional avoidance, the outside world appears associated with consequences. My theory is that Jax did something in the real world that forced him to run away. The extent of how bad it may have been is not yet clear. What is clear, however, is that he is running away from the consequences. If this is the case, then the circus offers something specific to him, a place where his behavior has no lasting repercussions. This would explain why Jax clings so tightly to the idea that none of this matters. If the circus is just a cartoon, then he never has to reckon with guilt, regret, or responsibility. Leaving would mean losing that protection. When he presses the red button, the decision is a refusal to return to a life that demands accountability. He pushes people away because closeness risks reminding him of a world he is actively choosing to avoid. The tragedy of the moment is that the circus, which is slowly destroying everyone inside it, still feels safer to Jax than whatever waits beyond it. I believe the abstraction scene is the last piece that reframes how we're meant to understand Jax's fate. Up to this point, abstraction has been treated as something catastrophic but undefined. We're told it happens when someone can no longer cope, when the pressure becomes too much. Because of that framing, it's easy to expect abstraction to look violent or explosive, something like a panic attack. What we actually see is very different. Jax's abstraction unfolds slowly. There's no immediate terror or moment of struggle. Instead, the scene is calming, almost hypnotic. It shows Jax completely letting go. Rather than being overwhelmed all at once, Jax seems to lose himself gradually. His mind turns inward. The world around him fades as he surrenders. That makes the scene unsettling in a different way. It suggests acute distress does not always cause abstraction. Sometimes it's the result of prolonged avoidance. When someone spends long enough refusing to process fear, guilt, or responsibility, the mind doesn't necessarily break. This also reframes Jax's earlier choices. By the time abstraction begins, he has already stopped participating in the group's shared reality. What's especially striking is how little resistance he shows. There's no sense that he's trying to hold on to anyone or anything. Jax eroded his connections over time, leaving nothing to anchor him. As a first depiction of abstraction, the scene sets a chilling precedent. It establishes what losing oneself in the circus can actually look like, and I doubt that if we see it again, it will be just as peaceful. Jax's arc tracks a steady narrowing of his world. From the start, he treats the circus as a cartoon and the people in it as fixed roles. That framing gives him control and distance. As long as everyone stays predictable, he never has to engage with their pain or his own. Over time, that system breaks down. The other characters show complexity, boundaries, and emotional depth that can be contained within the roles Jax assigned them. Rather than adjusting, Jax withdraws. By episode 7, his separation from the group is no longer subtle. He isolates himself, avoids shared experiences, and positions himself against the others both visually and narratively. His decision to press the red button reflects that trajectory. Staying preserves the emotional distance he has relied on. Leaving would require confronting a past he refuses to face and relationships he has already damaged. By this point, abstraction will likely be the final consequence of that withdrawal. If you enjoyed this video essay and want more analysis on animated series and character arcs, feel free to subscribe. I appreciate you spending the time here, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on Jax and abstraction in the comments. If you'd like to support me in another way, I also design and sell original shirts and other creations on my Etsy shop, Luna Maren. You can find the link down in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.